Welcome to the Freedom Focus series on the Fearless Tips and Talks podcast. We've got something special for you because we are going to interview approximately 10 guests who have found freedom in a particular area of their life. I'm so honored to take you through this chain-breaking series where we dive into specific topics that bombard our daily living. We want to equip and inspire you to walk in freedom from fear and anxiety in a world that feeds it. Well, hello, Fearless Tips and Talks. I have a special guest in the studio today. Her name is Stephenie Combs, and she knows her stuff when it comes to toxic relationships. And that is our topic today. We are in the Freedom Focus series where we are going to help you overcome a certain topic. And today's topic is toxic relationships. Now, Stephenie, when I kind of poll our community, this is like a heavy hitter. This is one that people struggle with so much is, how do I know when I'm in a toxic relationship? What do I do when I'm in a toxic relationship? And the anxiety and fear that surrounds this is so difficult. So we're excited to tap into your knowledge, but I'm going to give kind of an official bio on you first. Okay. So Stephenie earned a Master's of Arts degree in community counseling from Denver Seminary and a Bachelor of Science degree in psychology and sociology from Southwest Baptist University. So this is kind of cool. Before you came back to Missouri, you owned your own practice in Colorado. Yeah. So that's really awesome before you came back to Missouri. And this part really was interesting to me. You are a board certified telehealth therapist. So does that mean that you can help people all over the world?
Maybe someday.
Okay.
There are licensing laws that currently restrict me from being able to see people in states that I'm not licensed in.
Okay. Quickly tell us where you're licensed.
Missouri and Colorado.
Okay.
There is a law that we're praying changes in the next year that would then give way more freedom for that. So,
let's pray for that law because, man, I could if we could refer people out of Missouri, because we've got people listening all over, you know. But if you're in Colorado and Missouri, you know, you can look her up and you can get some. Okay, so anyway, you're board certified in telehealth therapist. You're trained in trauma-focused CBT, functional family therapy, and completed a level 3 training in, I don't even know what this Gottman method couples theory is. Did I say that correctly?
Yeah, the Gottmans.
Okay. So can you see why we picked Stephenie to help us with toxic relationships? She's kind of educated on this. And then when she's not working, she enjoys time with her family. She's been married to her college sweetheart for 18 years, and they have 2 daughters together. So Stephenie, thank you for your time today, and welcome to Fearless Tips and Talks.
Absolutely.
Okay. So I have learned that conflict can make you grow with someone if it's done well. And I've also learned that if there isn't conflict in your relationship, you're probably not really in an intimate relationship to begin with. So how would you advise people to have healthy conflict in their life? How do you approach healthy conflict?
As weird as it sounds, I think that healthy conflict starts with you slowing yourself down and paying attention to your own body and nervous system before you can accurately or maybe appropriately respond to someone else. Does that make sense?
So check yourself before you check someone else?
Yeah. Get that plank out of your eye, basically.
So how do you do that? Okay, let me just example. I'm mad at my husband. He's frustrated me about something. Instead of just going right in to talk to him about it, check myself. What do I do? How do I check myself?
I mean, what I tell my clients is that you have to slow down. You have to, if you start to recognize the physical cues that are coming up in your body that say, I'm frustrated, I'm upset, start paying attention to your heartbeat. Mm-hmm. Start paying attention to, are my palms sweaty? Like what is my autonomic nervous system trying to tell me right now? Get that regulated before you go and flap your jaws to someone and say something that you might regret.
Okay, so cool. Most people are like, I don't want to pay attention to my palms. I don't want to pay attention to my heart. I just want to go and tell somebody that I'm angry and I'm frustrated. So what would you tell somebody that just wants to go and have the conversation?
Don't.
Okay, calm down.
I would say, if any of my clients are listening, they're going to say, this sounds like Stephenie's a broken record. But in some of my training, what I've learned is that the Gottmans they call it flooding. Whenever you're emotionally flooding, when you're in fight, flight, or freeze, which is what our body's trying to cue us in on, when that happens, I'm not a scientist, but what they found was it takes a good 25 to 30 minutes to get yourself back to a healthy baseline. If you're not giving yourself that time, you're not breathing well, you're not getting good oxygen to your brain, so you're not going to think clearly, which means you're not going to say something the right way either. And so I tell my clients regularly, if you're having some sort of a conflict with someone, or if you're feeling yourself getting really worked up about something, you have to remove yourself physically from the situation and calm yourself down first, so that when you do talk to them about whatever you're not seeing eye to eye on, you're operating from a place of regulation rather than dysregulation.
That's so good. So you've realized, okay, now there are some people now flight, or freeze.
There's a lot of fight, flight, freeze, fawn. There's a whole lot.
There's
of
a bunch of F's.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Now there are a lot of people. So like, pre-Christ, I was called Cutter Christy. So I would not dysregulate. I think first I would just go on in hot and heavy and have the conversation. But for my friends that are
That's
listening,
not where my brain went. As a therapist, I thought you meant something different when you said cutting. You mean cutting with your words.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh gosh, I never assaulted anybody.
No, I thought you meant your self-harm.
You do need to clarify this.
Yeah.
I'm so grateful that you did. Thank you, Stephenie, for clarifying that.
Okay.
I did not self-harm, but there are people that will do that as well. But I'm thinking about my friends that are like, oh my gosh, I would never have a conflict. I'm just going to hide. I'm just going to maybe freeze, or I'm not going to. So what would you say to those people that maybe they know they're feeling those things, but they're like unwilling to go and have the conversation?
Unwilling to, you mean like they want to just kind of stay in that frozen place and basically avoid? I would say that there's probably some confidence struggles there.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so that's probably an indicator that you might be in a toxic relationship too.
Wow.
Right? Like if you don't feel free to be able to speak up in the relationship, then that might mean that we got to revisit what's going on in these dynamics in the first place.
Are there any tips or tools that you give your clients that once they've calmed down, like, because I know I talk to a lot of people, they're like, I don't know why I'm angry. I'm just angry. I'm frustrated. I can't put my finger on it. I don't know exactly. Do you have any like tools to help people like to figure out what they're actually feeling and how to talk to somebody about it?
So this, I feel like that people get confused sometimes with feelings and thoughts. They're not the same thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so, can you say the question again?
Well, it's just like what did I just ask you? I'm trying to remember. We're getting so deep here. I was asking you about what do you do when you don't know what to say, when you can't figure out, you said your feelings are different than your thoughts, but you don't know you can't identify what it is that you need. You know you're mad, but you don't know why.
Okay. So there are two different approaches that I've seen helpful. And one is sometimes it is helpful for us to slow down and say, what is contributing to why I'm feeling this way?
Ask yourself the question.
Yeah.
Okay.
And sometimes if we get so caught up in trying to be the detective and answer the why, we can wormhole in that. Does that make sense? And I see that you talk with people all the time with anxiety. I think that happens with anxiety a lot. Well, why do I feel this way? And then it's the shame thoughts and it's just the toilet bowl, the negative cycle that just keeps going down and down and down. So a lot of times what I'll tell people when they're in that place is instead of asking yourself why, ask yourself more what.
Oh.
What am I physically feeling? Because emotions are physical, right? What am I feeling rather than, well, why am I feeling this?
So that beautiful emotional wheel, I've that color wheel that tells you all of the different emotions. It's probably pretty wise to have that somewhere on standby, maybe on your cell phone, lift it up. We can link it to the show notes. Just an example of that wheel. And what I didn't realize is there's a lot under the anger wheel. There's like a lot under the anxiety. Like and that wheel is very helpful because you didn't realize how much is under the anger.
Yeah, that's what I tell people all the time is that anger is a surface emotion. What's beneath the anger? Oftentimes it's fear. Oftentimes it's hurt, things like that. But it's not normally just anger. And a lot of times people, if they would just slow down enough to get alone with themselves, turn the screens off, be in a room where you're just quieting and calming yourself, then maybe you can kind of be contemplative to figure out where that's coming from. But it's a fine line between figuring out where it's coming from versus I'm in my head and I can't get out.
Man, Stephenie, if the world would just stop and check themselves before they enter into a conflict situation, and I would say even social media.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I mean, it is like brutal out there on just people just firing off comments that are just so mean and so hurtful. Yeah. So think about that. Like, just take a moment to cool your jets that's good. Man,
I tell people this sounds crazy, but spell the word stop on the roof of your mouth with your tongue. Do something to like force yourself to slow down.
That's good.
Does that make sense?
Who does that?
Right.
No one does that, but that's amazing.
Right.
Okay, so we're talking about toxic relationships here. So can you give us some warning signs to help people to identify if they're in a toxic relationship?
I go back again to paying attention to your own nervous system. When you're interacting with someone, if you notice that you're physically uncomfortable, that could be a good sign. Another sign would be after having some sort of an interaction with that person, how are you physically and emotionally feeling after you've walked away? Do you walk away feeling totally beaten up? Or do you walk away feeling encouraged and built up? Because I think those could be two different. I'm not sure if that's what you were looking for, but those are where my brain went.
Yeah, but I think too, confusion.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many times I have been in a relationship with someone and I don't necessarily feel discouraged, but I just feel so darn confused when I walk away from them.
That's a great example because then I've been in those situations where you walk away and you start questioning things. Another sign of that toxic relationship would be questioning yourself. Did I just say that? Second guessing. I mean, I know the word gaslighting is thrown out a lot these days, but I think
Would you define that for us? A lot of people don't know what gaslighting is.
This is the like simple Stephenie definition. But I would say gaslighting is somebody says something to you and at one point and then they come back later and deny that they said it. Or it's a message that they gave you that then they maybe deny that they gave it. There's a lot of manipulation involved, but does that help a little bit?
They deny that they said it. So could it be minimizing your
Absolutely.
pain? It could be they
dismissing.
That was the other thing.
Good word.
Okay. Yeah. So they might acknowledge it, but then disacknowledge it. Is that how it?
I don't see a lot of acknowledging period in those kinds of relationships, but maybe. I would say if they do acknowledge it, typically from what I've seen, it's not genuine. The empathy is not present.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes. Gaslighting is one of those terms that you hear that people throw out a lot. And I think it's important that we really know what it means.
Agreed.
So I'm grateful for Stephenie's simple version of what that looks like. Okay. So I think everybody wants bullet points. But what I love what you just did is you really made it about you for toxic signs. It's how do you feel when you're around them and what does it look like once you've left? And that makes it really simple. If you don't leave in that relationship feeling like the fruits of the spirit, joy, love, peace, kindness, patience, if you're not self-control, it's like, that's pretty simple. You may be in a toxic relationship if when you leave, pay attention to how you feel. And so that makes it a lot easier. So there's some light bulbs going off in people right now. They're like, well, gosh, my boss or my marriage or my best friend or my sister, every time I leave, I feel discouraged or I feel confused or my heart rate is always a mile, just racing every time I leave. I think those are important things. Pay attention to you. Pay attention to your body when you're in those situations. And so let's say you are in that situation and you realize I always leave super confused or I always leave like sweaty and my heart's racing. What would be some advice? Like, would you tell them to go seek counsel? What are some like next steps to do in situations like that?
Yeah. I mean, counsel is always good. I think that the more that they observe, sometimes what I've seen with people is the more that they start to observe their physical reaction, just that act alone can feel empowering for them.
Oh,
does that make sense? But I would say, no, if they start to recognize that that's how they feel when they have these interactions with that person, first of all, it doesn't mean that it for sure is toxic. It just means I might need to consider that that's a possibility. But knowing future when they're going to potentially have an interaction with said person, what do they need to do to help set themselves up for success? Making sure that they are well rested, that they are well digested, that they are coming to the conversation from a place of secure and safe emotionally with their nervous system.
Yeah, no, that's good. So grace. You hear this a lot in the Christian community, just have grace, just have grace, just make sure that you love that person and you're full of grace. I think we are called as Christians to have grace because God has grace with us. But how do you have grace with someone and you're firm at the same time? You've recognized, you've stopped, you've said stop at the roof of your mouth. You've stopped, you've done that tactic. Yeah. You're calm, you're ready to approach the person. And you're going to have to speak some hard truths. There's some things that maybe these people have done. You've taken a look at yourself. You've taken responsibility for what you can own, but you need to go in and speak the truth in love. I think a lot of times people are afraid to do so because they think they just need to have grace with the person. So what would you advise?
What comes to mind first and foremost is safety.
Okay.
Some of the situations that I'm thinking about are whenever I work with a lot of individual women who talk about this in their marriages. And some of them don't always feel physically safe to be able to bring up those kinds of boundaries that you're talking about. And so safety is first and foremost. I'll say, what are you worried? What is the fear that you're having about bringing this up with this person? Are you afraid they're going to block you, punch you upside the face?
Right.
Like what are we talking here? Do we need to get you to the doctor, to the hospital? If safety, physical safety is not an issue, then really I talk about exposing themselves to those uncomfortable emotions that they're feeling.
Okay. What does that look like?
Does that make sense?
Yeah, but what?
It's breathing through. It goes back to that slowdown. It goes back to when I think about having this conversation with this person, I get really anxious. Well, instead of trying to do everything you can to avoid feeling the feelings of anxiety, exposing yourself to them, desensitizing yourself to those emotions instead of fighting so hard to ignore them. Does that?
So you're speaking of vulnerability. I mean, you have to be vulnerable with the person.
But you have to be vulnerable. What I'm saying is you have to be vulnerable with yourself first.
Okay.
I don't know if that's clear.
No, I mean, you are asking us to have some self-revelation, some self-awareness. Yeah. That we can't have healthy conversations, healthy conflict, have grace with people if we aren't first self-aware. Yeah. You can't run into a conversation with someone and have no idea what you're frustrated and angry or mad at. And I think so many of us perpetuate the toxic cycle because we just keep beating each other over the head over things that we don't even know what we're mad about. We don't even know what we're truly frustrated about. So the message that I just keep hearing you like say and that you want us to get the picture of is know yourself first.
Yeah.
Find out what's really happening inside of you, and then you can meet that person. Now, let's say they're safe, they're physically safe, but the thing that came to my mind is, what about emotionally? I mean, like, pre-Christ Christy could cut people with their words, and I would not have been an emotionally safe person in a conversation. I would have just hit them over the head with mean things, right?
Yeah.
So I try to tell people, and I try to tell myself, is this person an emotionally safe person? Are they a healthy person?
Because you want to throw your pearls to swine, as the Bible talks about, right? If they're not emotionally safe, if they're not emotionally aware of themselves, then they might not be in a place to fully receive what you're trying to vulnerably share with them.
But how do you know? How do you know if somebody's emotionally safe?
I guess that's where some of that risk initially comes. It goes back to, how do I feel whenever I'm interacting with them? Have they proven themselves over time to be emotionally safe? Part of it comes from observation, seeing how they are with other people in their interactions. As you observe that, does that seem emotionally safe to them?
Yeah.
Does that help answer that?
Yeah. And I think how many times do we keep running back into conversations where nothing is changing? It's the same thing. Or maybe they even say one thing, but act another. And I feel like it's so important for us to you're asking us recognize, if you go in, you have the conversation, and let's say they even agree with you, but then nothing changes, then
that's kind of an indicator that they might not be safe. Maybe they're safe not for your inner circle. Maybe they're safe for like an acquaintance, but that's not who I'm going to choose to be fully vulnerable with then.
Yeah.
That would be a boundary that you would need to set for yourself with that relationship.
So another thing that people say in the Christian world is you're supposed to unconditionally love. Unconditionally love. Lay down your life, and I think because Jesus did so, right? So how do you unconditionally love someone in a situation or in a relationship that you constantly feel hurt?
I think the definition of unconditional love needs to be challenged for a lot of people. Kindness is different than love. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. If one of my kids run into the street, I might scream at them or go and run and grab their arm and pull them back. And that might not feel good for them in that moment physically, but it would save them from feeling really unhealthy physically by being hit by a truck. So I think like what is love? If I see that someone is heading in a direction that doesn't seem like it's going to be healthy for them emotionally or physically or whatever, then I'm going to speak about that to them. And that's love.
Yeah, I think we think love means you do whatever you need to do at any time, even if that means that it hurts you. Mm-hmm. But what you're trying to say is love may sting for the other person.
Right.
And unconditional love does not mean that you allow somebody to walk all over you. Mm-hmm. Unconditional love does not mean that you never speak up for yourself. Unconditional love does not mean that that person can treat you however they want to treat you.
I mean, God loves us unconditionally, right? And there are so many examples in his word where he had to set those boundaries with his people, And
they didn't always feel good.
No. I mean, we're studying right now in my Bible study 1st and 2nd Samuel.
Okay.
And Saul did not follow through with what God very clearly told him he wanted him to do. And he left King Agag alive when he was not supposed to have. There was a boundary there that he disrespected, and God had to come back and say, unfortunately, like, he's going to have to go. And Saul, you're no longer going to be the there's going to be another king that comes up behind you. Mm-hmm. So I feel like he set a pretty good example to us of the fact that we can be unconditional in our love, as well as not just allow others to take advantage of us.
Hey friends, I want to tell you about Podcast Plus. For just $5 a month, you can subscribe to bonus content that no one else will receive. So if you love our Fearless Talks, you're going to love Podcast Plus. Head over to fearlessunite.com/podcast or just click the link in show notes. Okay, Stephenie, you have beautifully identified what unconditional love really is, challenged our idea of what unconditional love is. So love speaks the truth, but people are so afraid to speak the truth. Like I think of situations I've been in where, you know that someone is sinning, like there's a moral ethic issue going on, and you're called to speak up. You're called to speak the truth. Why, as humans, do we struggle so much with bringing the truth to the light? And why do we often just kind of bury our heads and just not go for it?
Honestly, I think, and this is even me personally, because I'm not, even though I know this book wise, like it doesn't mean I'm perfect at it.
Yeah.
I think that at the end of the day, most people are really afraid of being alone.
Wow.
And if I say something that calls something out in you that needs some refining, there's a risk that you aren't going to want to receive it. And I'm going to, in the long run, be rejected and alone on my own with that.
That is it. Yeah. We're afraid of being alone. We're afraid that we'll lose that relationship. We're afraid that they might retaliate. Yeah. We're afraid that we might be called a liar. We're afraid that they won't understand. So misunderstood, maybe that we would be misunderstood. So,
or that we can't say it the right way for it to be received well. Like I think a lot of people get caught up in, how do I say it? What do I do in these moments?
How do you say it? How do you speak truth in love?
Well, I think the golden thread here is returning to calming yourself, that autonomic nervous system. You're going to humble yourself. If you try to present something from like a sassy headspace, then it's not going to be received well. But if you enter into that place from a place of humility, and only that can happen by grounding yourself in the Word and in the Lord and spending some intentional time praying over that situation, over that person that you're needing to confront. And I think that's a good place to start.
Absolutely. So there's this crazy word called boundary, and people like to just throw it out all the time. And I don't even know that 90% of the time we even know why we're drawing boundaries or asking for a boundary. So I want to just start with, will you tell us from a clinical standpoint, what is a boundary?
I think a boundary is, I looked it up because I was just curious, like, what does Webster say? Boundary is a limit.
Okay.
Which I thought was like, oh, that's like, it's where your limits are, where you feel like you want to show respect to others versus making sure that others are respecting you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So a limit, allowing respect for one another. Mm-hmm. Okay. When is a boundary necessary in a relationship?
I think it's necessary in most relationships.
Okay.
Because we are emotional, spiritual, physical beings, and we all have different emotional, physical, spiritual needs at different times. Mm-hmm. And so, even in my relationship with my husband, like, I might need a boundary because, I just got home from work and I have not eaten in hours. And before I have this conversation, can I get some food in my stomach? That's a boundary.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So goes back to recognizing what is happening for you physically, honoring that so that you can then be fully present within whatever the relationship is.
So a healthy person would say, absolutely, Stephenie, grab a bite to eat. Can we talk in 20 minutes? An unhealthy person would be like, oh my gosh, I'm hungry too. Can't you just talk to me? Right?
Yeah.
So let's say somebody in that example that you just gave runs over your boundary. Then what do you do? What would you do in that situation if your husband's like, oh my gosh, I'm hungry too. Can't you just talk to me anyway?
I would say, I love you, but I need that to be respected. I need my boundary to be respected.
Woo! That's the part that nobody does, I think. We might be courageous enough to set the boundary.
Yeah.
So I've always been taught, and I don't know if this is true or not true. I think I read it in a book that there's internal boundaries and external boundaries. So you might have a boundary for yourself that you don't communicate to someone else.
So then you're breaking their boundary, right?
I don't know. Teach me.
I think to me, that would be you making an assumption that they can read your mind. And if you have a boundary that you've not verbalized externally to anyone, and then they break it, that's on you. That's not on them because, right?
That's powerful. So if you have any type of limit, you cannot expect somebody to just read your mind and understand that limit. You need to communicate that limit.
And the key to that is by using this. This is what all the movies make fun of us therapists for. I statements.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
If I say you're crossing my boundary, how about instead, I'm feeling dysregulated right now. I'm feeling tired. I'm feeling like I'm going to take ownership for what's going on with me because no one else is in my body and can feel it. So I'm going to explain that to them, what's happening and what I'm experiencing, and then letting them and then verbalizing what I need as a result of that feeling.
That's so powerful because I think we do often expect people just to know what our limits are. And I think sometimes people are ashamed of their limits. I speak to some people sometimes that are like, man, Christy, I feel like you can do so much, right? But I can't do all the things you're doing. I have a much lower threshold now because I had a nervous breakdown. But I think we compare our energy levels to other people and the things that we can do that other people can't do. And so sometimes you feel ashamed that you need to eat and the other person can go 2 more hours without eating.
Yeah. And everyone has a different window of tolerance.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And so you could maybe go off of 7 hours of sleep. Maybe I only need 6. Our bodies, that it just rings true that the Lord made us to be very unique beings.
And how do we embrace that and love one another better that way? Just understand that we all have different thresholds. We all have different needs and wants. And I think, again, I keep hearing you say it has to start with us. You have to be able to communicate your limit with, and I almost like just using the word limit with instead of boundary, because it's like cliche and everybody
I agree.
throws the word around. Just be like, hey, this is my limit right now. Yeah. Can you respect that? So, okay, you throw your boundary out and they don't respect it. You say, hey, I really need to eat. Can you give me 30 minutes? I need you to respect that. And they just say, you are so stupid. All I want to do is just have a quick 5-minute conversation with you. Then what? What do you do?
My normal response with clients in this kind of a situation, and it's not to be disrespectful to anyone, but I think sometimes it's easier for us when we think about the tangible then what's to go back to think about parenting.
Okay.
What would you do if your toddler did that? If your toddler that you're wanting to teach healthy emotional intelligence skills to says that they want something, you say, no, it's going to happen in 30 minutes or whatever. You're trying to set the boundary because we're supposed to train them up. If they start throwing a temper tantrum with you about that, what would your response be?
I would discipline. I would do something about it.
Right.
Yeah.
Would you immediately cave and go, okay?
Well, I think
we know there's a lot of people who do, but we also, I feel like we can see it better from that lens of looking at the toddler kind of relationship, that at least, even though that might be a lot of people's tendency to do that, I think that they can also see, but I know I'm not supposed to. Well, why aren't you supposed to? Well, because if I do, then that toddler is going to take a mile every time I give them an inch. Well, adults are just grown up like big kids. So if I want to eat before I have a conversation and I cave to that every time, by the way, my husband is amazing. He never would do that.
We're not saying anything bad about your husband.
But if I were to cave to that, that might be something in an unhealthy relationship that would be taken advantage of over and over and over again.
So it's important that we identify what our limits are right away and stick to them.
Yes, consistency is key.
Why?
Well, because inconsistency sends the message to others that it's okay for you to be taken advantage of.
So it's like, do it right away. Understand. Okay. A lot of people get confused on what I need to set a limit or a boundary up for and what I don't need a limit or a boundary on. How do you teach somebody like, okay, this, my friend, would be an area where you probably need to set a boundary?
I'm not sure if this is what you're looking for, but my brain went to saying yes over and over and over again, and never, like, if you're asked to do something, committing to things all the time and not slowing down to check in with yourself and say, is this realistic expectation for me to set for myself? Or do I need to say no in this situation?
Yeah.
Is that what you're looking for? Okay.
Well, I think a lot of times we overextend ourselves when, and that is rooted in wanting to feel loved. That's rooted in you don't want rejection.
Yeah.
I mean, that what are you afraid of?
Yeah.
And I think when you start to feel those things that Stephenie's trying to get us to really tap into in our body, the question, I mean, what am I afraid of? What am I genuinely afraid of right now? That could help identify what actually you're feeling and what you need to set a limit for.
Well, and I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, you're good.
The other piece of that is when we really can find that heaven perspective, and stay in that place and go, at the end of the day, yeah, I am afraid of being alone, but as a believer in Christ, I'm never alone.
That's good.
And so I'm going to stand firmly on those truths that I know are going to bring me there.
And I think we might be afraid to go there because ultimately we don't know how much Jesus really loves us. And I think if we don't go back to the basics of God is love and God loves you, and you truly believe that, and you have a deep reverence, awe, trust for our Heavenly Father, knowing that He'll never leave you or forsake you, we will continue to let people abuse us. We will continue to not set healthy boundaries.
Yeah.
We will continue to be in toxic relationships. So maybe what we're finding out in this conversation is, do you trust God?
Yeah.
Do you know how much God loves you?
And do you believe the definition of love the way we talked about earlier? Because He might not allow certain things to happen in your life, but it's not because He doesn't love you. It's actually quite the opposite.
Man, that's good. So there's a verse in Ecclesiastes that talks about there's a time to be silent and there's a time to speak. How the heck do we know when we should be silent and when we need to speak?
We were given 2 ears and 1 mouth.
Woo!
For a reason. And so I would say, when in doubt, stay quiet.
Wow.
Right? Like, I mean, there's so many different proverbs that talk about just our mouths and how we can run crazy with them.
There's
can be
power
so
of life
impulsive.
and death in our tongue.
Yes, James, right? And so I think that slowing down and staying quiet and observing might behoove you to at least settle yourself. And then as you're in that quiet, you'll know.
Man, that's powerful. I didn't think about the fact that I have 2 ears and 1 mouth.
My clients love it when I remind them of that in couples counseling.
Oh, you're like, dang it.
Yeah.
That's so true. Okay. This one is so hard for me. And I'm sure there's going to be other people watching, listening. They're like, yes, I struggle with this. How do we forgive someone who isn't willing to take accountability for what they've done to wound you?
Somewhere along the way, someone spoke this truth into my life, and it is that there is a big difference between forgiveness and trust.
Okay.
And I don't think that I think that a lot of people forget that. I can forgive you, but it doesn't mean, again, like I said earlier, that I'm going to allow you into my inner circle anymore. I'm forgiving you so that my heart doesn't turn bitter and resentful towards you, because that's not helpful for me. You could care less if I forgive you or not, really.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that is an important thing to keep in mind.
There's a difference between forgiveness and trust. That's so powerful.
Yeah.
We're all called to forgive. We're not all called to enter back into a trust relationship once that trust has been broken. Now, here's what's ringing through my mind right now.
Okay.
Marriage.
Yeah.
I mean, you're saying like, I don't have to allow you back into my inner circle again, but you have become one with this person that has broken your trust. So can you move your husband out of the inner circle while you're rebuilding trust? Like, how do you do that? And this might be a whole nother podcast. So if you can't answer it very clearly, but maybe just a little tip on what to do in those moments.
This is a really hard one. I have many women right now that I'm seeing dealing with this right now. And I think that them learning what we're working a lot on is some of these basics of slowing down and recognizing where they are physically and how they're reacting or impulsively responding to these situations is an important place to start. And at the end of the day, we can't control how the other person in the relationship is going to respond.
That's good.
And so it's a case-by-case basis. Sometimes, unfortunately, it can turn into that safety issue. Mm-hmm. A lot of times what I think it turns into is a theological issue.
Yeah.
I am not a theologian, but I have definitely talked to a lot of people about slowing down and determining, is this something that the church you grew up in told you? Or is this something that you have actually studied and read in the Word or spoken with someone who knows the Word in a deeper way? We have to figure out those things for ourselves.
That's good. Encouraging people to study it out for themselves is always it's always good. I think that God would never want you to be abused. Mm-hmm. God would never want you to stay in an unhealthy, toxic situation. That is not God.
Does that mean physical, emotional, spiritual? Probably all of the above.
He made all of that, right?
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
I think what we're trying to say is maybe just because you're not getting punched in the face doesn't mean that you aren't being abused in some way, shape, or form, and that abuse is valid in God's eyes.
Yeah.
I think that there is some theology that says that the only way you can get out of a marriage if it's adultery only. I know that I've worked with women and have come to me and said I'm supposed to stay in the marriage even though their husband is cussing them out every single night. Or it could be the other way. The wife could be, abusive in that way. Yeah. And what I love what you said, Stephenie, is you are not responsible for the other person's reactions, the other person's spiritual growth, the other person's inability or ability to ask for forgiveness. And I think it's so important that we make sure that we love ourselves enough the way that God loves us to be able to stand up and say, this isn't okay. I won't tolerate this. I won't allow you to speak that way to me. And so I think we can end in just this way of understanding that toxic relationships are everywhere.
They really are.
You wouldn't be in business.
Nope.
You wouldn't be seeing as many clients if you're seeing, if they're what, and we're all sinners that need grace and that are, working our way closer to Jesus. And we're all in different stages of that. The most important thing that I've heard you say today and has been so helpful is pay attention to what your body is saying. And I think often in the Christian spaces too, we disregard the body. We disregard the body. We don't acknowledge the fact that our clenched jaw and the butterflies in our stomach and the tension in our backs means something.
That it might be a bit of a red flag that our body's trying to speak to us, and that God created that body. And I think he did it in a beautiful way. So that's what I tell clients all the time is our emotions are our body's way of trying to say like something's going on for you. Mm-hmm. So absolutely.
And I think what I love is oftentimes people want to list a check mark box. You're in a toxic relationship if, and you go down, and what I love is you didn't give that to us today. And I like that because everybody's situation is different. And you might have listed something off that disregarded someone else that is still in a toxic relationship. But what you can and what you did teach us today is, what is your body saying? Mm-hmm. Pay attention to that. So why don't you get off of this podcast right now and you journal and you say, the last time I was with this person, I'm not sure if they're a toxic relationship or not, but the last time I was with this person, this is how I felt. Yeah. Give me a list of things that could be common, that could be negative, just so that you can, like, confusion, I said, was one. Mm-hmm. Butterflies in your stomach, feeling exhausted afterwards. I was just trying to think through some of the times. Yeah, what do your clients come to you?
The second guessing yourself is a lot of it. Did I come across that way? Is that how I, kind of that language in your own head is a big one, I think. Replaying, like, they did say that.
Replaying is such a bad one for me. I'll replay. I'm so glad you said that. Yeah. Replaying, because if it was a healthy conversation, you've moved on and you're watching TV or you're cooking dinner. Yeah. But if it wasn't a healthy conversation, you're sitting there replaying. Yeah. It doesn't necessarily mean it was a toxic relationship. It could be you. You could be the problem.
Exactly.
But it is an indicator.
But at the end of the day, it's about slowing down to pause. Mm-hmm. Did I bring toxicity to the relationship? Did they? Maybe neither, but at least being able to slow down to acknowledge it, that's key.
Gosh, you taught us so much today. Is there anything else, Stephenie, that about toxic relationships that we didn't get to say that you would love to say?
I guess I would just say, lean into the thing that's scaring you about bringing the thing up. Identify, what is that? How do you expose yourself? If you're just worried that she doesn't like seeing you cry, that has nothing to do with her nervous system, and she needs to learn how to be okay with that. It's okay for you to give yourself permission to cry if you need to when you're talking to someone. Or does that make...
Yeah.
So I guess I would say that.
That's so good. Friends, for anybody that lives in Colorado or lives in Missouri, we will link Stephenie's direct link in case you would like to, grab a spot with her for counseling. And I'm just going to end with praying for anyone that could maybe is found themselves in a toxic relationship, or maybe they're realizing that they're the toxic person. Let me pray for you right now. God in heaven, thank you so much for Stephenie. Thank you for her calm, just peaceful spirit that was able to just speak a powerful truth to us right now, Father. I pray that we would pay more attention to our bodies, that we would acknowledge the emotions that God has given us, and let that be an indicator of what's really going on in our relationships, Father. I pray for anyone that's in a toxic relationship right now that is scared to speak up, is scared to speak the truth in love, Father, that has maybe just let grace be abused because they haven't brought the situation to the surface. Lord, Lord, I pray right now for a boldness, a confidence, just a courage that would rise up in them, that they would be able to stand up for themselves. Father, I pray for anybody that is in an unsafe situation, that they would get the help that they need, Father. And Father, I pray for anybody that might be the toxic person, Lord, that sweet conviction would come over them right now, Lord, and that they would seek help and healing. God, you died on the cross for our wholeness, Father, and we walk around not living in that wholeness, Father. So guide us, lead us, Father, and do what only you can do. Heal us from the inside out. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you, Stephenie.
Thank you.
If you found this to be helpful, you can find out so much more in my book, Nervous Breakthrough. And guess what? Right now, you can order it on Amazon. Also, can you do something for me? Will you help us get the word out about this podcast? I would be so honored if you would share it with your loved ones, rate it, review it, and also be sure to subscribe. And lastly, and I really mean this, we want to hear from you. If you have suggestions or ideas on something that I should cover or a tip that you'd really like help on, please send us an email, podcast@fearlessunite.com. Again, that's podcast@fearlessunite.com. Thank you so much for listening.